We're going to have ourselves a little discussion on expectations today. Wherever you're working in your life, like whatever it is you're working on, whatever goals you want to accomplish, whatever domain of your life you want to accomplish them in, you likely have some expectations for what the result is going to be. What we're going to talk about in terms of those expectations is when your expectations aren't met. Because for most people, more often than not, they set a course, they want to go get something, and then it falls short of whatever they expected to have happen. I know that's happened to me more times than I can count in my life. Chances are it's happened for you as well. So let's talk about what happens when we've got these expectations and really what to recognize inside of it and how to get over that and how to overcome it. As always, these things come to me in different stories and things that happen in my life. And this happened last weekend when my family and I were going down to one of the beaches in Incline Village, Nevada. It's on the far north shore of Lake Tahoe. It's an amazing place. If you've never been there, go check it out. Lake's awesome. The trees are awesome. The mountains are awesome. There's nothing that is not awesome about this. Plus, Mark Twain was right. To breathe the air that angels breathe, one must travel to Lake Tahoe because the air just smells like so much different up there. But we have this in our mind, the four of us in our family, my wife, my daughter who's 11, my son who's 8. We have this in our mind that we're going to go there and we're going to do some stand-up paddleboarding that morning. So we get down from our house down to the beach area, and this was about 9:30 in the morning. Now, normally, perfectly flat lake, other than a little bit of boat chop. But on this morning, the wind, for whatever reason, came up. And I don't know how wind is generated from a meteorological standpoint, but there was a lot of wind where there were white caps out on the lake, meaning that there were breakers that were happening, which if you ever stand up paddleboard, that's not exactly good water to go on. You want more like glass water to go on where the top of the water looks like glass. So this obviously wasn't going to work. And we were all disappointed because our expectation was that we were going to go have this family outing. We were going to do this. And we ended up playing on the beach and building sandcastles and stuff like that instead. But the whole point of this is that you don't get to vote on how things work out. You don't. You think that your expectations of how they work out is going to happen that way in order to be justified, especially when you're doing a lot of work towards trying to get something. Obviously, in this context, all we were really trying to get was some family time, a very little bit of a workout, and some more practice for my kids who did a stand-up paddleboard camp earlier this summer. But we didn't get to vote. God voted when he put the wind in there and said, you're not going paddleboarding today. Now, let's relate this to something that is probably really palpable from a business perspective, especially when you're trying to drive leads and you're trying to make sales. And it feels like based on what your expectation is of the return relative to the work you put out, maybe it's not meeting those expectations. And this is something that I talk to a lot of people in my circles and my clients about, is that we don't get to vote. Now, what does that really mean when it comes to our expectations of what's going to happen and we don't get to vote? So when we're creating marketing messages, when you're creating marketing messages, you could have the best marketers in the world or the best copywriters in the world. Like you could have Michael Masterson, which if you haven't looked up at him or any of his books on copywriting and persuasion architecture, check him out because it is one of the easiest ways to figure out how to persuade and shift somebody's thinking into making them desire what you have. But you could have the best people on the planet from whatever persuasion aspect you need to. You put it out to the marketplace and you may not hear anything back. You may hear zero. You may expect your leads to flood into your business thousands a day, but it doesn't work. Well, here's why. Because you think that everything was right. You had all these best and the best of the best doing whatever it was to frame your messaging up. You had great video. You had great lines to say. Everything was awesome when you watched it back after you watched the edited version. But it didn't work. Because you don't get to vote. You don't get to vote on what the outcome is. So your expectations of what the outcome is are entirely futile, or rather what the outcome should be. Guess who does get to vote? Who does get to vote is the marketplace. Obviously, when the story of me going down to the lake, God voted because he made the wind. But in your case, if you're marketing, the marketplace gets to vote. You don't get a vote. People vote with their wallets. So that's one of the problems too. I want to talk about that for a second, that I see people making is they put together a piece of marketing. Like let's say they put together a video or they put together a website. They ask their friends what they think of it. Now, everybody that is your friend is going to say, oh my God, that's amazing. I love your video. Your website's awesome. But they don't get to vote either because they're not voting with their wallets. Here's a great example of this in my own professional life. So I've talked a lot. I haven't talked about it so much recently, but I've talked a lot about the massive failure with the apparel company that I tried to start in 2015. Didn't try to start it, actually started it. One of the things that I realized looking back on it, applying this lesson that I screwed up, was that I asked people that were my friends about the idea. And then I asked people even that weren't my friends about the idea, but I failed to talk about what the price point was going to be for the apparel product that I was making for outdoor muddy obstacle course racing athletes like Spartan and Tough Mudder and shit like that. So I asked people, my friends, say, what do you guys think about this idea? Here's some initial designs. Like, what do you think about this? And all of them were like, oh my God, this is amazing. You're going to be a billionaire in 3 months. And I'm going like, you think? You think? Because I wanted to believe that myself. That was my expectation. Then I started talking to people at those races. I used to do a lot of those races. So I'd talk to people after we finished up and I'd say, listen, I'm creating this. It's going to be like this amazing apparel specifically for this. What features do you want? And they'd tell me what features they want. I'd write them down and be like, would you buy that if I made that? Yeah, absolutely. I'd buy that if you made that. But I failed to ever talk to them about the price. Now, looking back on it, I was scared to talk to them about what the price was going to be because it was a really high price point. And in my mind, that was going to be justified because we were making world-class stuff, which we did. And we were selling it to people that were doing races that were like $150 for a weekend. And they do a lot of these things. And what did I fail to do? One, I failed to tell people, would you buy it at X price? But two, I also failed to recognize my marketplace in that because if you look around the parking lot at a Spartan race or Tough Mudder when they used to have those, you saw a lot of cars that were less than $10,000 to buy. Now, those people are not paying $129 for a pair of compression shorts, regardless of how good they are. But again, I went out there and my expectation was that we were going to sell out based on the people that I talked to, which were my friends, and then people who didn't vote with their wallets. They simply sat there. No vote with the wallet. They said yes, and I believed them. So my expectation was out of alignment with what the marketplace was doing because I didn't get to vote. The people that I talked to didn't get to vote either. The only people who voted were people who voted with their wallets. And on that particular product and that particular offer, they voted no. Obviously, I've taken that and learned so many lessons out of it that has transformed into the creation of multiple offers that work and helping people put together offers that work. So it's worth the lesson inside of that. But the larger lesson here that I want you guys to take from this episode is the reframing of your expectations based on your feelings about the work you've done. You can think that whatever you've done is the best in the world, but you don't get to vote. You can take this into any particular area of your life as well. Let's say that you were doing this in a relationship. You did all of this work. You set up like this amazing date that you were going to go on. You marketed the date. You're texting your girlfriend or your wife or your husband or whoever before the date goes down. And you're like, I did everything. I got a haircut, I look good, I smell good, got a new shirt. Like this is all working. You don't get to vote on the other person's perception of all of that. So your expectations of whatever response you're going to get are only happening inside of your mind. You don't get to vote. So think about this in the context of what do you need to let go of in terms of your expectation relative to the work that you put out? And how much lighter will you feel once you release that expectation? Easy to say, hard to do, but I promise you if you do it, you are going to actually get more results, which I recognize is absolutely crazy. Oh, and don't forget, if you liked this video and you want to see more videos like this from me, I publish 3 of them every single week. So hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you're notified of every single video. Next one might just be one that you feel like you've really needed to hear for a really long time. But we don't know until I see you on that next one. Thanks for watching this one, guys.